want to warn you now, this recording is going to be all over the place. My mind is absolutely frazzled after having just, as of 45 seconds ago, finished what might just be peak television. There's not a lot of shows out there that I feel like can top. It's only a 2-season show. That's what's so, mind-blowing about it, is the fact that in 2 seasons, they managed to wrap up, in my opinion, perfectly all of their plot points. Including, which I didn't even think they were going to ever revisit the idea of, talking about the fucking wizard from episode 1 for episode 1? Maybe it was episode 2. I don't know. For Jace's origin. But I'm getting ahead of myself, okay? If you have not watched... like I hadn't until a couple weeks ago, do me a favor, go get a Netflix subscription if you don't already have one, go watch. You will blast through those 2 seasons in a shocking amount of time. The only reason it took me as long as it did is because I was balancing a fucking million other things that I was doing and watching all at the same time. And even then, I was tearing myself away from watching Arcane in order to do and watch all those other things. So big thanks to my buddy Kane for bullying me into finally getting started on Arcane, because I loved it so much. I have to say that Vi is definitely my favorite character. You know, I teetered between Vi and Jinx a lot throughout the whole show, but I think ultimately Vi takes the cake for me. I got a few different characters and story points that I want to touch base on, and I have some notes, so I'm going to kind of try to go through that. These notes are not in any particular order, so forgive me if this is jumping around a good bit, okay? I'm going to put some pictures on the screen to, reinforce what I'm trying to get at as much as I can, but every time I've tried to put clips of anything in a video, I always get fucking hit with copyright and it forces me to remove it, so I'm not even going to try to do clips, okay? I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry, because fuck you, you're here for my opinion, not for clips of a show. Alright, the first character I want to talk about, I'm pretty sure her name was Savika, if I remember correctly. Could be tweaking. It's the chick who was serving under Soko and had, the one robotic arm. If I remember correctly, she was working for Vander when the main cast was still primarily kids. And it was kind of cool to see her develop towards the latter half, because I kind of forgot about her right until Soko became frequently prevalent about, halfway into season 1, I would say, when he was on screen a lot more and we saw her a lot. And seeing her robotic arm change a few different times between the one that Soko made for her and the one that Jinx made. The one Jinx made was really fucking cool with the lottery machine pull lever and all that shit. That was neat. I liked that a lot. And also seeing her appearance adapt and, seeing her become the leader of Zaun and getting a seat at the council was super interesting as well. I don't know. I feel like despite her not being a main character, they gave her a lot of love that helped her stay relevant without overdoing it. You know what I mean? They didn't try to force her into the limelight to so much that it was dreadful to watch. Everything with her was genuinely entertaining, and it all felt like it made sense with how things were progressing. And her relationship with Jinx was super interesting to watch too, between, she started off hating Jinx because, Jinx was a liability that Soko refused to let go of, and she just saw her as just that, a liability, a danger, a wild side, whatever you want to think of it as. She was just kind of, Jinx was a risk that Savika wasn't willing to take. And then once Soko was gone, they were at each other's throats until they needed each other, pretty much. If I remember correctly, that was when, Caitlyn and her whole gang was kind of, flooding Zaun. They finally started to team up and get along then, and that was super cool to watch. And then, we didn't really see them interact with each other too much more after that, but either way. Vi. Alright, Vi being my favorite character. Oh, god damn. Dude, she was cool when they were kids, being the kind of leader of their little ragtag gang. I feel bad, I can't remember the other 2 kids' names that died, but, her, those 2, Powder, Vander, obviously Vander wasn't really part of their little gang, but still he was involved a lot. It was neat seeing Vi being a leader of that to going and becoming this lone wolf that we see her as in her adult life. And even her reveal scene was cool as shit in the very beginning when we first see her as an adult, and she's in the prison cell and she's punching the wall and shit. Dude, she has so much fucking aura, it's ridiculous. Specifically, what I made a note about was the Fight Club era. That's what I addressed it as. When she dyes her hair black and we get that montage of her just fighting people over and over and over again and, getting absolutely wasted and screaming and all that shit and just painting black makeup on her face a ton and whatnot. It was kind of corny, but well done. It was done in a way where it was damn, this is super fucking fascinating and fun and entertaining to watch, but it's also heart-wrenching because it's I know why this is going on at this point. point. So I really liked Vi overall as a character. She had a lot of ups and downs, but there wasn't a single time where I was sitting there watching her and I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, everything felt natural for her, even up to the very end when she just broke down looking at what was left of Vander, even though there really was nothing left. He was just Warwick at that point, which they never called him Warwick in the series, but the subtitles called him Warwick, so I don't know. But I think it's, you know, it makes sense to call him Warwick when he's in that last form that Victor turned him into, because Vander's just gone. There is no Vander left. But even seeing Vi break down like that, looking at him after everything is almost said and done, and she just can't bear it. It makes so much sense. It's almost like coming full circle for her, and the fact that Jinx sacrifices herself in order to take that Vander out and save Vi, you know, that brings Jinx pretty full circle, as well as, you know, it kind of forces Vi to move forward with her life. You know, she's always gone back for Jinx, for Powder, you know, over and over and over again. She's willing to go back on things for her sister and for Vander, and now, you know, she doesn't have either of those. She has to move forward. I already know about the fucking Caitlyn and Maddie scene before I knew the ending, what happened in the final episode, and that little bitch Maddie. Ooh, I started hating on her before the ending. Alright, I liked Maddie when she was introduced, and I liked Maddie for the most part. I really did. I really liked her as a character. And then Maddie and Caitlyn were hooking up when Caitlyn and Vi split. I was pissed. Pissed immediately. I texted my buddy Kane and everything. I was like, there's no fucking way that this bitch Maddie is putting her hands on my girl Vi's little cutie patootie, goddammit. There's no fucking way this is happening right now. I was livid, okay? That was the only note I wanted to make about Caitlyn plus Maddie, but it was also really fitting. It was totally out of left field that Maddie turned on Caitlyn. I don't know, maybe I'm forgetting something, but I didn't really pick up on any hints that was coming, unless there's like some kind of deeper narrative to it that I just didn't pick up on because I'm a little simple-minded. But it was really fitting to have Maddie being the one that was about to execute Caitlyn. I was fully expecting it was going to happen. I thought it was going to happen right then and there. I was like, damn, this is fucking insane. I was like on the edge of my seat and everything. And then the fucking Mel's shield popped up and killed Maddie. That was, woo. I think Maddie's last words being, "I enjoyed your warmth," is kind of neat. You know, addressing what her and Caitlyn had, and almost as if like there was hinting at, you know, she did enjoy it. Or she did enjoy Caitlyn's company and that she did feel something about it, but I don't know, for whatever reason she chose to commit to this role that she ended up in. Now Caitlyn as a character, I felt very back and forth with. You know, for season 1, I really didn't care for her. Not in a way like I disliked her, but she wasn't really in the forefront of my mind. She felt like she was someone with a lot to prove and a lot of willingness to do what it took to prove it. And I kind of liked that about her. It was interesting. I didn't dislike whenever she came on screen and we had her stuff going on. But for me, it was like season 2, especially like when she became the general and they started doing all their shit, purging Zaun and whatnot and all this, that, or another. All of that stuff really started to fucking kick in for me. And General Caitlyn had a fucking fit on. I am not sorry to say that. She was fitting. She wore that motherfucker, that goddamn cape and everything. That was tough. I texted my buddy as soon as that popped up too. And towards the end, I genuinely liked Caitlyn. She had grit. She learned a lot. She grew a lot. She kind of got, in my opinion, like the Gohan treatment, at least from like the beginning of Z through the Cell Saga, where we got to see that growth, that development, that learning and changing actions based off of what they've learned. The only difference is there wasn't more show for them to have Caitlyn fall off like they did my boy Gohan. But I'm not going to get into that because that's not what this video is about. Silco was a really cool character. I think he was really well written. He fucking ran on. He kept that shit in check just like Vander did, except in his own way. Don't get me wrong, he was definitely evil. Like, there was no question about it. But even his ending was super interesting, super fascinating to watch. You know, the season 1 finale when Jinx is in full like psycho mode and she's got Vi tied up, Caitlyn tied up, Silco tied up, and she's sitting there and she just is going absolutely fucking psycho, and then she just lights Silco up. I don't remember exactly what triggered her to do that. I think he got up and was about to shoot Vi or something, if I remember correctly. I don't know, but it was interesting. He, all the way up through the very end, was manipulating Jinx, so he was a super neat character. And then seeing him in the alternate fucking timeline, that was cool. I loved that whole episode, that whole segment, watching Echo Echo and Heimerdinger in the alternative timeline was so fucking cool. And seeing Silco there, even for just a brief moment with Vander, just seeing how things could have gone was neat. I definitely think it would be interesting if we could somehow get a little bit more of a lore drop on that timeline. Obviously we won't, the show's done with, but if we could get like a lore drop on that timeline, I guarantee Silco isn't actually fully good. There's no way that world that we saw was so pure. I bet Silco was doing some evil Knievel shit in the background, alright? Not that evil Knievel is evil, but that's just what came out of my mouth, okay? And Bessa and Mel Madara are super well written, super interesting characters. I had a really bad feeling about Mel for most of season 1. Just the way she was moving and the way she was doing shit with Jace, I really for sure thought that she was gonna be a bad guy. You know, it felt like she was manipulating and pushing Jason to shit that he shouldn't be or didn't want to be doing, and I fully thought she was just taking advantage of him and gonna be evil, essentially. And I do still think that she was taking advantage of him and she had some nefariousness, but I think around the time when they slept together and they started becoming more personable with each other, you know, they talked more personally and they still, I don't know how to describe it, but around then I think she kind of lost her motivation or changed her motivation behind influencing Jace so much. And then the fact that she became a sorceress was so fucking badass. I was not expecting it. It was cool to see a magic user that was outside of the hex tech systems. I don't know. It was just super fucking cool, and her design was cool. I liked her powers, the way she used them. It was, I don't know. She definitely had some fucking aura to her at that point. And then Bessa came out the fucking gate swinging. Alright, she came through and she had some fucking like swagger to her. She had that scene where she was being fed grapes and she was laying there like she ran the fucking city. What was it called? Progress? Like, I don't know. I liked Bessa immediately and I knew she was going to be a villain. There was no chance she wasn't going to be. I didn't see her getting a redeeming arc, and from my perspective, she never did. You know, there was nothing that ever redeemed her. But I think she got a fitting ending. Getting that fight against Caitlyn and Mel, Caitlyn being like an adopted daughter / protege, and Mel being the outcasted daughter, the safeguard against her own weaknesses. That ending was super interesting. And then having her sent to the, like the Black Rose or Black Thorn sort of pocket dimension, and Mel killing the source of that in front of her right before Bessa died was so fucking cool. It was confusing at first. It took me a second. I had to sit there and really process what was happening. But Mel essentially forced Bessa to see right in her dying moments that, hey, the line ends here. Because if I remember correctly, the Black Thorn or Black Rose or whatever it was is what killed Mel's brother. So, yeah, that was kind of a blunt ending for that point, but I feel like I need to keep it moving, otherwise I'll keep sitting on shit for too long. Jace and Victor, super fun to watch their whole development. Victor was between side and main character for me in the beginning in season 1. You know, he was very important, but he was never in the limelight like that. Even his scenes were so brief and fleeting that, you know, it was easy to forget what Victor was up to at any given moment. And Jace was always in the forefront between the council and Mel and all this other shit that was going on. And then the explosion happens at the end of season 1, and Jace proves that he was a ride or die in that moment. You know, it was kind of questionable for a lot of season 1. He said he was, you know, pretty committed to Victor, but he didn't do a lot that really felt like it until this explosion happened. So then we see in season 2, Jace proves he's a ride or die. He's pushing, he's doing everything he can, he drops everything to try to save Victor's life. And Victor starts to come back a little bit in his whatever hex state, and Victor just develops episode by episode and more into this fucking magic wielding supervillain that's super fucking cool. And Jace, like, continuously was trying to help him until what seemed like when Jace, Heimerdinger, and Echo all went into the Hex Core, whatever you would call that, where they got sent into different places, and Jace went to, I don't think it was the future, I think it was an alternate future. But Jace went into the alternate future and he saw the world, he experienced everything he experienced, and then fucking the finale revealed to us that the wizard that he talked to there and that he was following around was another Victor who explained, you know, all this shit and told him what to do and what needed to happen. And then Jace came back and Jace was like, look, I gotta stand on business. I love you, Victor. And even now, he was like still committed to Victor, just not in the same way. He was committed to saving Victor from that fate. He blasted that motherfucker in the chest, and I think he thought it was done, because that thing in his wrist that he got in the very beginning disappeared in that moment. I think he thought it was kosher. And then they had the war with Ambessa coming, and Jace started to lock in on that. And Jace called for all arms, and Savika and the people of Zaun weren't really about it at first. Then he kind of came around, and that's a whole different thing anyway. But Victor became that ascended form that he took, and Jace was fighting back with the people. It was, I don't know, their relationship ultimately developed the rest of the world, which was super fucking interesting to watch. Isha was the mute girl that became Jinx's little sister type character for a good while. I loved Isha. She was super cute. She had a lot of cute little actions about her, and her fucking ending was heartbreaking. That shit was hard to watch, but it was so fucking cool. Taking out Vander, pulling a Jinx, and doing the little fucking pew thing that she did. That was so great. I think they did Isha really, really well as a character. For someone who couldn't talk, you know what I mean? It was just, they did her really fucking well, and I loved it. Singed is, I believe, the name of what I label as the Miracle Doctor. He's the guy who had the fucked up eye. He was Victor's first teacher. He was the one who turned Vander into Warwick. He created Shimmer, all this stuff. He was a super interesting guy, and I like that they revealed his motivations late, so that way we didn't, I don't know, it didn't feel like they tried to plant that seed too early. I think they brought it in at the right time to give us just enough time to chew on it, and then not have to worry too much about it. It didn't, like, we didn't have to think it was going to come into the plot, the main plot. I think if I understood correctly, he came back in the end. It seemed like he had made like a doll body for his daughter, and it seemed like he occupied it, because that doll body was sitting there looking at one of those like music chest things, and there was a reflection that was his face. So I don't know if that was supposed to be something about like his daughter did live for whatever reason, and then that was just like him watching from the afterlife, or if that was him occupying that body. I don't know. It was kind of weird. Vander was super neat as a character too. He was super caring. He was definitely like the staple good guy in the show. And I think that's part of why he couldn't be there for the whole thing. He kept Zaun together as a community. He definitely would have done a lot for the overall world if he had been alive. I mean, fuck, we saw what happened in the good timeline just in Zaun. How different it was. I didn't even realize we were in Zaun for part of it, with how different things were and how good things were. So Vander's death unfortunately was necessary for the plot to happen the way that it did, but it was well done. We got to learn a lot about Vander in the very beginning, and then we only got to learn more as time went on. So that was, I don't know, I really liked it. And his transformation from Vander to Vander chemicalized, slaved, whatever you want to call it, to full-on Warwick was just, I don't know, it was heart-wrenching for sure. And then finally, my man Echo, I put him last on the list because I was excited about this. Echo, I don't know how I felt about Echo for a good while, I'm not gonna lie. He was kind of in the background for a good bit. He started out as Little Man, which was just a neat little guy, and then he became the leader of, I think they called him Firelights, if I remember correctly, which I keep fucking up and saying Fireflies because I'm thinking The Last of Us at the same time. Not important. Anyway, he was the leader of the Firelights. He was helping people. He was kind of like a new age Vander, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's just Vander, except he put the hands up more often. He was out there on the front line doing business. And to see him progress, he hated Jinx. Hated her with everything, despite the fact that they'd known each other as kids and everything. He knew to push it aside, and he knew what it was. He knew it was on site. He fucking fought Jinx as soon as he saw her. He didn't hesitate, yada yada yada. And then we got to see him go to the alternate timeline with Heimerdinger, and he had to work with Powder. And at first he was like super aggressive, and then he honed in, and he realized what was going on. He learned, he did what he could. And then to find out, oh my god, dude, fucking Vander's death kept us from getting Echo and Powder. That was a devastating realization for me when I finally processed that. I was like, damn, because that was so much fun to watch. Watching Echo finally get to be happy, and being with Powder, Jinx finally having a good life on top of that, it was so fucking, it was so cool. It was so good, and it was so well written. It was like one episode, or like an episode and a half. It was just so well done. That's how you know it was good. And then Echo just becoming the fucking GOAT for the finale. Don't get me wrong, I understand he wasn't there for most of the war, but he pulled the fuck up. He had that time machine thing, alright? He fucking fought tooth and nail. Even when everyone else turned into their little ascending state when they'd been grabbed by the Victor bots, or whatever you want to call them, he fought. He was sitting there, he had that little mesh hex thing on his face, and he was still trying to pull the fucking handle on his time machine thing. He fucking upped that shit, and he cranked it. I'm not gonna lie, I thought he was gonna die there. I thought he was gonna exceed the 4-second limit that him and Heimerdinger had discovered, but he didn't die. It was super cool. I'm happy that he didn't die, but at the same time, I think a hero's death would have been fitting for him, but I'm okay with it. You know, I really liked how they did everything with Echo. I wouldn't change it. I'm just saying, if there was a different way for it to go, that would have been the only other way I could see it being appropriate, right? Heimerdinger, I don't really have much to say about, honestly. I didn't have him on the list, but me talking about this just made me think I should mention it. At first, he kind of weirded me out because I felt like he was super out of place, and I didn't really know how to feel about it. It's not like I disliked him, but more so that I just disliked the idea of the character, and then he grew on me because he wasn't annoying. They didn't make him memey or anything like that. He was just a different species, and he had a different voice, and they did that really well, because I was worried he was going to be annoying with like his voice, and they were going to give him annoying mannerisms or something, but no, he was good. He was well written, he was an enjoyable character, and I'm glad for it. He provided a lot of needed portions of the story. So if you have anything to say, please keep it to yourself, because I absolutely hate reading comments. I hope this video has been entirely unhelpful to you, and I hope you have a bad day. Oh, fuck. If I remember correctly, I'm talking. That was bad. Let's see here. I don't know if the mic picked that up or not. I just burped. The daughter, who was like a surrogate. Surrogate? I don't think that's the right word. When they, he knew what, even when everyone else had immediately turned into, God, can you talk?